Hey, Ohio State fans, Alex Gleitman here, back with the second edition of the Huddle Up. It is game week. Ohio State will kick off on Saturday night against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And while the game is going to be what everyone's focus is on, immediately following the game, that focus, as long as they win especially, will turn to recruiting, as Ohio State is set to host one of their biggest recruiting weekends, not only of this upcoming season, of the entire 2022 calendar year, but maybe even in recent memory. And to talk about Ohio State recruiting and this upcoming weekend, I bring on the founder of BuckeyeHuddle.com, my cohort in the recruiting area of the site, Marc Givler. Marc, thanks for coming on. Really excited for this week. Excited to have you on the show to talk about all these 50 plus guys coming to Columbus this weekend.
It's going to be one of the biggest recruiting weekends they've ever had. And it's quite frankly, it's one of the biggest weekends I think I can remember covering this team. Is there's been some great opening matchups, but this one's got a lot of extra stuff to it beyond just the hype of two top five teams. So a lot of shared recruiting targets will be on campus, which I think is interesting. And I can't wait to see how things play out here the next few days.
Yeah, and we'll cover some of those guys off in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk about this weekend. As I said, I think my last count, there was like 56 players that we had on our list visiting. And I think about 55 of those 56 were 4 or 5-star players across the classes of 23, 24, or 2025. And there's even a couple 2026 kids that will be in attendance as well, which is pretty crazy that we're already talking about that. But Marc, in late June, that June 24th weekend that everyone seems to think was a massive disaster, even though if you look at the numbers, it's going to end up probably being just okay. Everyone felt that there was just too many visitors for Ohio State and they couldn't handle it, even though it was the same exact number of official visitors as the June 17th weekend, which turned out to be very, very good for Ohio State. So with 56 visitors, having to prep for a game, I know Ohio State chose this over having a barbecue type of event at the end of July, competing with some other schools. It felt like they had the premier stage for opening weekend, and that a month apart, they'd rather have the big time recruits come in for this game and see the game day atmosphere and what it's going to be like. And hopefully Ohio State put on a show against Notre Dame. In your opinion, can hosting such a big recruiting weekend be an effective tool for Ohio State? Like, can they actually move the needle when it comes to helping recruits make their decisions, move Ohio State up on the list? We know the game day atmosphere is going to be great, but I guess the question is more so, is this more effective than maybe, having done a big time barbecue type of event at the end of July?
I think most years I'd probably say no. I think most years I would probably lean towards doing a barbecue thing and having guys up and you can spend the day with them and you're not prepping for a game. What I think is interesting about this weekend, though, is basically an entirely new defensive staff. I think a lot of, if there's one question mark about the Ohio State football program right now, it's the defense. And, obviously Jim Knowles is a successful defensive coordinator. And I think a lot of people are anticipating their defense to be very good this year. But I think when we talk about what can Ohio State show some recruits that they haven't been able to show recruits the last year or two, it's a dominant defense. And a lot of the guys I think we're going to talk about here are defensive guys. So in that sense, I think this actually does play well for them as far as who they have on campus and the familiarity they have with some of these guys that we're going to talk about, where they've already had them either for their official or they're going to have them on the official this weekend. And so there's comfortability there with the guys they've already had on the official. And then with the guys they're going to have on the official this weekend, they do get that day on Sunday to kind of do the whole visit thing where it's not distractions and everything else.
Yeah. And remember, the official visitors, they have that 48-hour clock, with a lot of them probably playing Friday night. They're probably going to fly in sometimes Saturday morning, Saturday, maybe early afternoon. And so they'll technically be able to stay till Monday if they want, which is Labor Day. And, no one has school or anything like that day. So to your point, like, they're not just like, a lot of times these kids for official visits will fly home Sunday around, noon or in the afternoon, and they don't get that full day. They should be able to have those full days with, guys we'll get into in a minute, the Damon Wilsons, the Keon Keeleys of the world. And then obviously there's some kids coming out from California that we'll talk about as well that I can't imagine are just popping in for a quick 12-hour type of visit or 24-hour type of visit here. So I think that they set this up really well. And I think for a lot of the other kids, they're going to have time to build those relationships and get them on campus maybe after the season where they could spend that more time, and having these like really big first or early visit type of impressions with what should be an electric atmosphere opening day in Ohio Stadium at night against Notre Dame, another top 5 team, with the chance to showcase that new defense, showcase this explosive offense. It really, as long as they win the game, it should set up, not that losing the game is going to change anyone's decision necessarily, but these guys are going to be a lot more fun to be around if they win the game on Saturday night versus if they lose. So, I tend to agree with you that I think that this was a smart move. Strategically, they put a lot of thought into it, and we'll see how it plays out. We're definitely going to have full coverage on BuckeyeHuddle.com. If you're not a member, come check us out. Try us out for a month. We do have annual subscriptions as well, but just try us out for a month. I think that now is the perfect time. Coming up on kickoff, this huge recruiting weekend, you're going to get to read everything I write in my A-Deck column, Mark writes in a school session column, all the different visitor reaction type of pieces. So definitely check us out. And speaking of those official and unofficial visitors this weekend, Mark, why don't you just, for those people who are listening and not that familiar, we both don't need to go through this, but I think you're going to do a pretty good job. Tell everyone what, the typical visit may look like this weekend for a recruit that comes on campus.
Yeah, I mean, if we assume that they're probably going to get there Saturday, it's going to be a lot of getting to see what the pregame looks like at Ohio State. I'm sure they'll take them to the skull session, to the various activities that go on before the game, get them in the locker room, get them around the team, get them out there for warmups, get them in the stadium early, get to kind of have their run of the place until it gets completely packed. And obviously they'll go through the game. They'll meet with the coaches, I'm sure, afterwards. Probably that'll probably be a brief chat for most guys, but they'll have an opportunity there at the end of the game. And then, Sunday, that's when the real stuff's going to happen. You're going to spend time with your position coach. You're going to spend time with academic advisors. You're going to go through if you haven't been to the school before, you're certainly going to do a campus tour. So there's a lot of things that'll get packed into Sunday. And then Sunday night, I'm assuming you're going to have, you're going to have dinner with your position coach, or your primary recruiter, possibly Ryan Day, and kind of recap, basically recap how things went. Usually the coaches are, going to be super concerned about how, the things they weren't involved with went, making sure the academic presentations went well, making sure, anything with the tours, they, basically making sure parents see what they need to see, making sure everyone's, having a good time and getting to look at what they need to look at. And so each visit will be tailored a little bit to different kids, but that's, the gist of what they'll be going through this weekend.
Yeah. And I think the cool thing is, in addition to all that, there's going to be an opportunity for the kids on campus to meet some pretty cool people, probably, or at least see a lot of really cool people up close and personal. They're going to be honoring the 2002 national title team. A lot of big names are going to be featured in that group. There's rumors of LeBron James, and maybe his son Bronny coming to campus. I mean, that type of experience is going to be incredible. Orlando Pace, his son is going to be coming up as a recruit, 2025 recruit, and his older son's a walk-on the team. So I imagine the Big O is going to be in the house. And so this is going to be a star-studded. It's Labor Day weekend. It's a holiday weekend, primetime game. I mean, it's going to be a star-studded weekend for Ohio State, not just on the field and in the visitor list, but with some special guests potentially as well, which I think can kind of make it a really cool weekend overall. Let's get into the visits though. Let's start with the 2023 class. We'll kind of go by class here because I think that might be the best way to go. There's going to be 3 big uncommitted visitors. I think by my count, there is 15 commits on campus. Mark, let's just talk real quick. How big is it to have 15 members of Ohio State's 2023 class in Ohio Stadium on Saturday night?
Yeah, I think that's one of the more important things this weekend. Obviously hit some turbulence there in the summer. couple of decommitments, look, the Carnell Tate and Mark Fletcher, those rumors aren't going to go away. I think they're okay with both of those guys, but let's face it, the rumors are not going to stop there. So getting a bunch of these guys together on campus, I think, can kind of help them corral this a little bit. So, if someone is, even like a Noah Rogers, who I know, NC State is relentlessly trying to flip and keep him home, getting those guys back on campus, getting them around their future teammates, I think is incredibly beneficial. I think it's at a great time. It's not too early in the game where you're doing this in May or June, and now you've got all this time you've got to survive, but it's not so late in the game that you're giving them all the, giving the NC States of the world, the Alabamas of the world that are trying to poach your guys, that first shot here in the season. So I think waiting till after the summer to get a group like this together, and then obviously electric atmosphere, arguably the biggest non-conference game of the season. I'm sure Alabama and Texas fans will disagree with me, but I think this is the biggest non-con game. So it's good timing. And like I said, I think it helps build camaraderie within the class. And if like I said, if there's 15 of them there, and even if just one of them's just a little bit on the fence, having 14 future teammates around you for a weekend, I think can really help them kind of keep things stable.
Yeah, I agree. And Jelani Thurman, tight end, coming up from Georgia, is another one who already made another visit to Auburn. But I also think, outside of just building that camaraderie, being able to start to build those relationships with the three uncommitted guys we're about to talk about in just a second, I think that's absolutely huge. And the first one we're going to talk about is maybe, such a ironic story here, in that he was committed to Notre Dame for a year and a half or so, maybe a little less than that. But Keon Keeley, defensive end from Berkeley Prep in the Tampa area, recently decommitted from Notre Dame. It's looking like it's an Alabama-Ohio State battle. Everyone has Alabama as the favorite, I think probably because he took unofficial visits to Ohio State and Alabama back in the spring. Both of those schools felt like there was a chance to kind of crack open the door and flip him later on. Alabama got him back on campus for their barbecue event in late July, which ultimately led to that decommitment. So, I mean, it makes sense. I think, Alabama coming in as the favorite is a fair statement and assessment. In my personal opinion, I don't think that the lead is insurmountable or that far ahead. I think Ohio State has been cautiously optimistic since the late March visit that they have a shot at Keon Keeley, especially if they could get him on campus this weekend. And so they're going to have their crack at Keon. I'm not sure how it's going to go. I want to see how this visit goes before I make a call on where Ohio State stands truly in this recruitment. But Mark, how do you feel about Keon and Ohio State's chances to land this 5-star defensive end and top 10 player?
Yeah, I'm with you. I would give Alabama the edge right now. I think he's probably a little bit more familiar with some of their commits, some of their guys. Certainly, they have the recency bias going for them with the most recent visit, a couple of visits here in the last few months, whatever it is. And they're supposed to be getting him back for an official in October. So that's going to be another hurdle at some point, assuming that goes through as planned. But at the same time, I think, I look at a couple of things here. Ohio State's been on Keon for forever. I mean, a year and a half, maybe more. There's been rumors that they were a threat to flip him for the entirety of that time. So this is not, they're not coming out of left field. They've been very much a force in this thing the entire way. I know he decommitted right after the Bama visit, but Ohio State's been just as much of a force in that and kind of wavering as anybody else. I don't know that Ohio State and Notre Dame are similar environments and programs, but I would argue that Ohio State's a little more similar to Notre Dame than Alabama is. So if it's just more of like a coaching staff change there, and just if he still kind of wants that more Midwest, maybe a little more laid back family type environment, I think Ohio State's got some juice there. And now we see the Larry Johnson factor at work. Larry Johnson's been a driving force in this recruitment. No reason to think that won't continue. And you get him around some of the guys and see how it goes. But, kind of alluded to at the beginning, I don't get too high or low on the outcomes of games, but if Ohio State could ever influence some recruits with a great defensive effort, I think this would be the weekend.
Yeah, and I'll also add, he and Luke Montgomery have become pretty close. They were both, even when he was committed to Notre Dame, and they both had visited Notre Dame and Ohio State in that spring period, and they kind of hit it off. And not that that's going to affect Keon too much, but that is a familiar face that he feels very comfortable with. And then this is the same high school as Nick Petit-Frere, and I'm not saying that again that that's going to dictate this decision, but there's comfort with Ohio State and the head coach Dominic Chow, and I know that Greg Schiano was there, and he has ties to Berkeley, and that was a big driving factor of Nick at the time. But having Nick Petit-Frere as an ambassador of Ohio State, you guarantee that at some point those two are gonna have some words, and I'm sure Nick is gonna have some kind things to say about Ryan Day and his staff and Larry Johnson and what Ohio State can do for Keon Keeley off the field, not just on the field. And I do think that is important to Keon Keeley and his family, to your point about kind of being a little bit more similar to Notre Dame in that regard. And then there's going to be, the whole, I'm sure Alabama's going to throw Will Anderson at him, but Ohio State's going to be able to show how they've been able to produce NFL defensive ends, and Alabama really hasn't, as far as his mold particularly. So, and that's going to be probably a common theme here in just a bit that you'll get to. But let's talk about the other official visitor before we go there. Another Floridian, Damon Wilson out of Venice in Florida. What do you got on Damon, Mark?
That one, the three guys I think we're going to really dive into here, I'm probably least confident in Ohio State's chances with Damon Wilson. Maybe watching kind of the visit structures of Keeley and Mateo, who we're going to talk about. Obviously you're going to like those situations. I think there's a greater comfort level with those two, between those two in Ohio State at this point. I think Damon's recruitment's a little more wide open, even possibly than the other two, certainly more so than Keeley, I think. I don't know. We'll see. I think this is the one they've got to really crush it. I think the other two have a pretty good idea of what Ohio State is and where Ohio State stands with them. I think this is the one that is going to be a tough pull.
Yeah, I agree. There's been a lot of chatter about Ohio State and Damon Wilson for months now, and I've just never felt like Ohio State has felt that they had this great chance with Damon Wilson. Not that they weren't in the game. I think they kind of just were always like, look, yeah, like, is he ever going to visit? I mean, if that happens, yeah, maybe we got a shot. And now Damon told me he's planning on visit, but until Tom Moore or Tony Gerdeman or Kevin Noon or someone inside that stadium on Saturday night lays eyes on Damon Wilson and confirms it, I mean, let's see if he gets off that plane first, and then I think let's see how the weekend goes, because for me, I've been hearing Georgia feels pretty confident in where they stand. Alabama, Miami, and Texas are the other finalists. I don't think it's going to be Texas. I mean, with some of the NIL money they may be able to throw around. You never know. Obviously, Miami's an in-state school. I don't think you can ignore them. And then Alabama's Alabama. I mean, if they start to feel that maybe Keon Keeley is slipping away, maybe they turn up the heat with a guy like Damon Wilson a little bit too. So I tend to think, you always like, this is your line. I'm feeling it, but the field versus Ohio State, I'm probably taking the field here with Damon Wilson. And I think you feel the same. But the next guy, I do think that they have a great shot with. I don't think it's the home run slam dunk that everyone may think, but Mateo Uiagalelei from St. John Bosco in Bellflower, California, making an unofficial visit to Ohio State after taking his official this summer. I think this is maybe his third or fourth trip overall to Ohio State, maybe his third or second, at least a second on his own dime. And this was a really meaningful visit for me. The fact that he's coming in, I know that some of his teammates were coming, and it's easy to, kind of jump on that, but he doesn't have to come. He can do whatever he wants at this point. I mean, he's got a spot held everywhere pretty much until, he enrolls somewhere next year. And for him to be spending his own money to come out to Ohio State, I think that's a big deal, considering I had the Buckeyes as the leader coming out of the summer. Now, I think USC is a big threat. I think Oregon's a huge threat. I think Mateo's going to see what those two schools look like this year with new coaching staff. Alabama's still lurking, and Alabama's Alabama, and they do have an official visit left. So that's a big deal that can't be ignored. Mark, how do you feel about Mateo? I know you've had a pretty good read on this one for quite a bit.
I feel probably about as good as I can about a guy who may not even sign until February, who's gonna go the distance here. National battle. I think Alabama may end up running into the same problem it had with JT Tuimoloau, which is, look, you can't look. Mateo is. You're not going to convince Mateo he's Will Anderson. They're not similar body types. That they're not similar at all in how they play the game. So you're gonna have to sell Mateo on putting a hand in the dirt, but all your hand in the dirt guys are taking up blockers, and you're not going to have, generally speaking, you're not going to have that 10-12 sack season as a hand in the dirt guy at Alabama. Ohio State obviously has a tremendous track record with the Bosas and Chase Young and several other guys in that regard. So I think from Ohio State's perspective, I think the bigger threat, and I think Alabama is by far the biggest threat for Keeley, and in a sense could be a big threat for Wilson just because of how hard they want to push there. But I think where Ohio State does have the edge over Bama, as we talked about a couple of these different guys, is in this particular recruitment. And so for Ohio State's purposes, I think you have to watch out what's going on in the out west. I almost said the Pac-12, but USC is very shortly going to be a conference rival. But I think you have to pay attention to what's going on out there. Obviously, geography, good deal there with geography. Could be a hometown hero in LA. NIL at USC's strong. A lot of juice right now with Lincoln Riley. How quickly do these new coaches at USC and Oregon come out of the gates? If they stumble out of the gates and they create some doubt about, is this going to be maybe a longer term thing, especially at USC? I think everyone expects Oregon to be pretty good this year, but if things look at USC like, maybe this isn't going to be a year one thing with Lincoln Riley, maybe this is going to be a 3 or 4 year build. I think that would obviously go a long way to helping Ohio State, but yeah, I think that's there are several hurdles here with Mateo. There's no question. When you're a national recruit of his caliber, it's not just one thing you have to worry about. But I think if we prioritize what they have to worry about, it is, okay, how much momentum do USC and Oregon get this fall with new coaches? And again, if that can be thwarted by, a couple losses or, if something doesn't look right, that's only going to help Ohio State. But I think ultimately, I think the relationship here with Larry Johnson's fantastic. We saw his older brother DJ go almost as far away as he possibly could from Los Angeles to go to Clemson. The family makes business decisions. They make their perceptions on what is going to be the best for each kid in terms of making it to the NFL. And that is going to be the priority. It was the priority with DJ. It's going to be the priority with Mateo. And I think Larry Johnson's done an excellent job selling them that Ohio State's the best place to do that. And I think that'll continue. And so it's not a lock, but I really like Ohio State. And out of the three we've talked about here, I feel like they have the best chance with Mateo.
Yeah. And, I know I've said this before, but the family is actually very close with Paris Johnson's family. DJ and Paris from the same class. They went on a lot of recruiting visits, all those events and things like that, and 5-star challenges and the openings and the whatever of that, whatever happened that year. And there's a relationship there. And not that Paris Johnson may even be on campus when Mateo Uiagalelei, enrolls, but there are a lot of good things to say that are trusted coming from Monica and Paris Johnson and that family. So something to think about. That's the 2023 guys. It's going to be really interesting to see. I don't think a decision's imminent for any of them, but you never know. We'll have full coverage at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Let's talk about 2024s. I'm not going to go into each of these guys because there's just way too many of them, and the show would probably be 3 hours long if we did. Just going to rattle off. Quarterback Dylan Raiola is going to be on campus. He is committed to Ohio State. He is the #1 player in the class. I think that's huge for Ohio State. They're going to have him as kind of the ringleader, trying to convince everyone else to come. But listen to this list, Mark, and then I just want you to pick like maybe 2 or 3 guys of who you're really like excited that they have on campus that you think that they are either in good position for or can make a move for. They got running back Corey Smith from Wisconsin, Sam Williams-Dixon from Ohio, wide receivers Jeremiah Smith from Florida, and Ryan Wingo, 2 5-stars. Tight end Christian Betancourt, who has an offer, earned one this summer. Aiden Steinfeld is a maybe, and Damarian Witten from Glenville is also a maybe. Offensive lineman Ian Moore and Donovan Harbor, both top 100 kids and have offers. The defensive line group's really strong. King Joseph Edwards from Georgia, Nigel Smith from Texas making the 4th visit on his own dime. Edric Houston, also from Georgia, and in-state product Cincinnati Taft, Elias Rudolph, as well as he has an offer. And then Brian Robinson from Fitch, Austintown Fitch. He does not have an offer, but he is someone that Ohio State will continue to evaluate very closely. Linebackers, 5-star Sammy Brown from Georgia, 5-star Kingston Villamuasa from St. John Bosco in California, 4-star Anthony Specca from Pennsylvania. That's a really strong group there. Cornerbacks Bryce West and Aaron Scott in state, possibly Mike Matthews down in Georgia. And then the safeties, Garrett Stover and Peyton Woodyard. Garrett Stover may end up being a linebacker. He's from Ohio. Peyton Woodyard, also a St. John Bosco kid. And then KJ Bolden, another 5-star kid from Georgia. They'll also have athlete Aeneas Williams in town. That is some list, Mark. 2 or 3 kids you just want to point out that you feel either Ohio State has a chance to make a move with or is in a really good spot with right now.
Oh gosh, just trying to whittle this down. Look, I'm not going to go any low-hanging fruit and take any of the Ohio kids. I think the Ohio kids you mentioned, they have a great chance with all those guys. I'm not trying to downplay their importance or anything like that, but I don't think sitting here and claiming I think they've got a great chance at Garrett Stover is very profound. Who is fantastic, by the way. I saw him last week. Going to be an unbelievable linebacker in college, I think. But the interesting ones of many to me are the most interesting. I want to watch those Bosco kids, Kingston Villamu-Asa, Peyton Woodyard. Again, multi-time visitors now. I think 3rd time, for each, these are all obviously for them. These are all unofficials yet. They can't do the officials yet. Kingston's coming off an injury. I've had guys in California tell me he could be the best player in California in that class once he's 100% healthy, which I believe he's pretty much at that point now. Peyton Woodyard's a big time safety prospect. Alabama, Notre Dame, a couple others involved there as well. But I think those are 2 guys they have a great chance at. And then you get the Buford kids. This is fascinating to me. If you can get the Buford kids to show up, and all indications that they will be there, which are KJ Bolden is maybe one of the 10 best players in the country in this class, big time athlete, safety prospect, and King Joseph Edwards, a top 100 caliber, kind of like jumbo athlete, we'll call him, probably a defensive lineman in college. Those guys, I don't want to do the dreaded package deal, but those guys do talk a lot, even on social media about, possibly going to the same school. And I think KJ Bolden put out something the other day that he's going to probably release a top 5 in pretty short order, or as soon as he can, to kind of trim the fat off of his list. So these are also guys, KJ was 2nd visit, I think. Yep. I think he was up in the spring. So Buford's a familiar program. I think there's a lot of respect for Ohio State, that program, the way they handled the Harry Miller situation, just everything else they've done with recruiting guys at that program, doing it the right way. So I think those are the interesting ones to watch, because these are national guys from 2 of the most competitive recruiting territories in the entire country, in SoCal and suburban Atlanta. So, but they're all guys I think Ohio State's got a chance at. So I think those are going to be the ones maybe I'm zeroed in on the most as far as the underclassmen.
Yeah, again, it's easy to take the easy way out. Ohio kids, Jeremiah Smith, I think Ohio State's in a great position for as well. I'm going to call out a couple other guys that I'm going to have my eye on. Christian Betancourt, tight end from Illinois, came out this summer, earned an offer at camp. Same thing with Ian Moore, offensive lineman from Indiana. These are kids in Ohio State's region. I think Christian Betancourt is the Ohio State type of tight end. I think he's what they look for. He's what they've gotten And I just think that they have a very good shot having offered early and having a second chance in just a few months to impress him. So, I'm really excited to see what they do there and where they stand after this visit. And then Ian Moore, top 100 offensive lineman. You talk about Ohio State's been in it early for these big time national offensive linemen. Many of them are not in the Midwest region, not from the state of Ohio, not from Indiana, these bordering states. They're from the South or from the East. This is a chance to get one of those big time linemen in your region. And, second visit in a few months, they have a tremendous chance to do that. So on the offensive side of the ball, those are two guys I'm looking at. Nigel Smith, I mentioned his fourth visit on his own dime. I wouldn't be shocked if he commits in the near future if he's given that green light. And then I'll call out Sammy Brown. I think Georgia and Clemson are going to be really, really hard to beat here. But he loved Ohio State last year when he came up. Whole new staff. They're going to have a chance. He's giving them a full chance to impress them. And to your point, they put on a great showing. They show how Steel Chambers used, show how Tommy Eichenberg's used, how they can use Sammy Brown in this defense, kind of captaining that defense. The atmosphere is going to be super impressive. So that's what I'm looking at. Where does, can Ohio State make a move on Georgia or Clemson after this visit?
That's an interesting one because I spent some time with Sammy in the spring. We met up with him. He was at track practice for all he qualified in like a whole bunch of state meet events. Guy's a freak athlete, but I've been really skeptical there. But the fact that he's coming back up after they kind of took the sledgehammer to the defensive staff in the offseason, it is interesting. I still look at Clemson and Georgia. I'm like, boy, how are they gonna overcome that one there with Sammy? He just seems like a kid who doesn't play at somewhere like Clemson or Georgia, but it's an interesting opportunity, and it's one that we thought they would. He said they would get, but you never. Kids always, oh yeah, I'm gonna get back up there, and then they don't. They commit somewhere else. So he's following through on that. So that's an interesting one to me. But Christian Betancourt, if they could get him, that would be about as big of a tight end pickup, I think, as they've had recently, because I saw him at camp the day they offered, and it was obvious he was going to get offered. I mean, I watched him run the first 3 or 4 routes. I watched him run. I'm like, holy cow. And he's like a Nick Vannett, type of, Jeff Hireman, big body tight end. But he's got fantastic hands. I think he might be a little more athletic than those guys, especially the Hireman. I know Vannett was a little smaller than Hireman coming out of high school. So maybe Vannett was maybe more in that stratosphere.
And he's the one still in the league.
Right, exactly. But Betancourt, he was fantastic. He was really, really good. And so if they could get him, that'd be something to get excited about. I think he's a really, really good player, really a guy, again, not just a third offensive tackle. He's got that size to him, but he is a gifted athlete. He's a very good pass catcher. He's a very athletic kid.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be a huge get. And we're going to end the show right now. I mean, there's 2025 kids coming, some big time kids. Ryan Montgomery from Ohio has an offer. Gideon Davidson and Jordan Davison, 2 running backs that have offers, are 5-star type of kids. Jamie French has an offer. Landon Pace, Orlando's son, and Bear Tenney at tight end. Commit Jonte Gilbert. DJ Pickett's a top 10 type of player in that class. So 2025, we'll cover those guys fully after this weekend. But I want to end the show and wrap up here. Mark, I'm going to put you on the spot. Any booms this weekend? Any commits for Ohio State coming out of the weekend?
I think someone's going to go. And I think one of the, I don't even know if it's going to be I don't think it's going to be one of the defensive linemen. I think those guys are going to at least play this out a little bit longer. I have a feeling that 1 or 2 of these young guys are going to not be able to help themselves. I wish I could tell you which one it is specifically. I don't have even a Jeremiah Smith, I think would be possible. I know we keep saying, probably a little bit more, a little longer, wait a little longer. But, I just think 1 or 2 of these guys, especially get Dylan Raiola in there working them. I think 1 or 2 of these underclassmen is just not going to be able to help themselves.
Yeah, I agree. I said I was going to set the over under at about 1.5. I'd probably take the under just because the history of these types of big games doesn't really yield immediate commitments. It does down the line. And I'll say one commits, but I'm starting to think as this week goes on, maybe we get a couple of these younger guys and maybe it's 2 or 3, you know, maybe another 2025 pops. You know, you got to hold on to that one for a few years, but I could see, you know, maybe an in-state kid in 2024 gets super excited and maybe one of these out-of-state kids just kind of gets caught up in it, but we'll see. It's going to be really exciting. We're going to have full coverage on BuckeyeHuddle.com. You know, again, Mark's going to have his full session. I'm going to have my A-deck. We're going to have these recruiting visitor stories following the games and the visit weekends. And it's going to be awesome. If you're not a member of Buckeye Huddle, please join us. Give us a shot. That's all we're asking. I think once you're in, you're going to love what we have to offer you. It's not just the recruiting stuff. Our team staff does a great job. We bring a really unique approach with the X's and O's stuff, which now that the games are going, it's going to get really exciting. So a lot of great stuff going on at BuckeyeHuddle.com. But Mark, thanks for joining the show. Everyone listening, appreciate you. This was the Huddle Up with Alex Gleitman. We'll see you on Buckeye Huddle soon, and we'll see you hopefully after a big Ohio State win this weekend.